Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Beis will begin Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, the last line. So we were in the middle of the sugya over here about rice bread, and that if the bracha is the bracha rishona is a mezainas, the bracha achroina, it seems to be a contradiction. It seems to be a stira. Is it ala michya or is it borei nefashos? So we're attempting to answer the apparent contradiction by saying it depends on the shita of Rabbi Gamliel the Rabbanan. Rabbi Gamliel says that on the Shivas Aminim you bench, and the Rabbanan say unless it's Mine Dogan, you don't make Shalosh Brachos, you don't bench, you make Hala Eitz. The last line on Daf Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yehuda says in the name of Rabbi Gamliel, Kol Shem Shivas Aminim, anything that's from the 7 minim, v'loy min dogan, and it's not min dogan, v'loy min dogan, or min dogan v'loy aso pas, or even if it is min dogan, but it's not made into bread. Now, even in these cases, Rabbi Gamliel loymar shalosh brachos, you still bench. But the Chachamim say v'chomim bracha achas, only a bracha achas. Because if it's a chomsei, this is the way we paskin, that if it's one of the grains and it's made into bread, you bench. But otherwise, it's bracha achas. Kol she'eina loy mishivas amina v'loy min dogan. But it's something which is not shivas amina and not min dogan, can pass iris v'doichen. If it's made bread out of rice or millet, Rabbi Gamliel loymer bracha achas mein shalosh. Rabbi Gamliel says you make and al michya v'chamran v'loy klum, and Chacham say it's a bari nefashos. So therefore, we want to resolve this apparent contradiction by saying that where it's an al michya, it's going according to the shita of Rabbi Gamliel. That's where it's a bari nefashos. It's going according to the shita of the Chachamim. Frank the Gemara b'maya kim to Rabbi Gamliel. How could you set sign and say that the brisa that we had on Amud Aleph, the previous brisa, is going according to Rabbi Gamliel, and that where it says on the oires you make an alamichya, I am a sefer the reisha, the sefer of the reisha of that brisa, of that previous brisa says im en haprusas kayamois, if you have the bread made out of the grains, and if the pieces are not intact, you make a mezainas of l'seif, mevorach lebracha achas mein shalosh, you make an alamichya. Now, money, who is this going according to? You're suggesting that brisa is going according to Rabbi Gamliel, but the seif of the reish of that brisa l'chora cannot be Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Gamliel hashta akaiseves v'daisa, even on porridge, on Rabbi Gamliel gimel brachos you bench. So even on dates and porridge, you bench, man prusas kayamas, if it's made out of grain and the pieces are not intact, miboya, certainly you would say 3 brachas you would bench, not an alamich. Pshita rabbanan. So it must be that brisa is going according to the rabbanan, not Rabbi Gamliel. So it seems to be a contradiction because that brisa said that after the rice you make an alamichya, and the other brisa says that it's Bori nefashos. Ella, the Gemara answers, L'olam Rabbanan, it is going according to the sheet of the Rabbanan of Atani, Gabi Orez of L'Seif, Eina, Mevorach Allah, V'loi Klum, and we have to amend the previous brisa and say that afterwards, after the rice, that it is a Bori nefashos and not an alamichya. So the shita of the Rabbanan is that on rice and rice cakes, etc., it is, you make a mezainas, and afterwards it's a bari nefashos, and that's how we paskin lahalacha. Amar Rav, hi riyata de chakloi. This porridge, similar to what we talked about before, the mafshe beit kimcha, if it has a majority of its flour, mevorach barim mezainas, you make a mezainas, my time at the smidi ikar, because the flour is the main ingredient, the main component, and therefore you make a mezainas. The mechuza, but if it's the type that they make in mechuza, the loy mafshe beit kimcha, they don't use a lot of flour, so the other ingredients are more the oil, the honey. That's the primary ingredient. Mevorach lav shahakol ne'abedvora. You only make a shahakol. My time with duv sheikar, because the honey is the main ingredient. But however, no, that's not so. In both cases, both types of this porridge you make mezainis. Why is that? The Rav Shmuel Damar Tarvaya, Rav Shmuel both said, Kol sheyesh boy mechamishes aminim, anything that has in the ingredients of it, it has from the 5 types of grain, even if it's not the majority, even if it's the minority of the ingredient, you still make a bari minei mezainis because of the importance of the chashivas of the Chamisha Mina. Amar Yosef ha chavitza di ispe perurim. So it's something that it's a cooked machal, and it has pieces of bread. So perhaps something like a souffle. It's a maisa kedera, and it has pieces of bread. So if the pieces of the bread are large enough that they're size, a minimum size of a kezayis, it's considered like bread. You make a maitzi, and rachachrayna is benching. However, the less bepirum kezayis, if the size of the pieces are less than a kezayis, the first brachas of mezainas will say bracha achas main shalish. And the bracha achrayna is ala mechya. Amar Rav Yosef min amina lo. What's my proof to this? Because the Tanya, we learn in the Brisa, haya aymer makriv menachos b'Yerushalayim. If a person was makriv the korban mincha in Yerushalayim, aymer baruch shechiyana v'kiyamana v'yaganu l'zman hazeh. So he's doing this mitzvah. He makes a shechiyana. Not lan la'achlan. Now he's coming to eat the mincha. The mincha is made out of flour. Mevorach ha'mitzalech min aretz. He makes a maitzi. He's eating the bread. He makes a maitzi. Vatana Allah. Now, what is the consistency of this mincha? Now, he takes the mincha. Now, as Taisus points out, what we're talking about over here is specifically the mincha that's fried, which is similar to the scenario that we're discussing over here, where we're talking about this maichal that had the pieces of bread in it, but it was a maichal amasa keder. So now when he takes the mincha, so we say v'tonolav kulam paisim kezayis. It's broken into pieces of a kezayis. Right? He does the kemitza from the mincha, and he has pieces which are the size of a kezayis. So therefore we see that even though it's fried, but if it has pieces that are on the size of a kezayis, you make hamaitzi. Similarly, in this case over here of chavitza. How can you say that? He says no, that the mincha, after it's fried, is broken into very small pieces, it's like a flour. It has the consistency of flour. You're going to say, well, they don't have pieces which are the size of a kazayas. Are you therefore going to say he does not make a maitzi? It's not considered bread. Maybe you'll say that that's the case. We learned in the Brisa, if he gathered a kazayas with this and ate it im chometzu onish koris. If it's chometz, it's onish koris. Now, Taisus points out, we're not talking lakat mikulam. It's not referring back to the case of the mincha, because that case of the mincha, it was not chometz. So we're saying in a similar case, if you had a similar type of consistency of something that was similar to the state that the mincha was, we're not talking about the actual mincha itself. If you have something that had that consistency, and you gathered a kezayis worth of it, im achlan, if you ate it, im chometz, so if it's Pesach and it's chometz, it has these onish koretz. He's considered eating chometz on Pesach. V'im matzahu adam yoytze b'yirech v'asu b'Pesach. And if it's matzah, his yoytze is chiyuv of matzah on Pesach. Now matzah has to be eaten as a bread. Of course, then it's not chometz. It's matzah, but it's as a bread, and his yoytze is chiyuv of Pesach. It has to be something that you make hamaitzi. So you see over here that even though it has pieces, small little pieces, they're not a kezayis, it's still considered to be lechem. And you'd make hamaitzi lechem in aretz. More answers. Over here, what are we talking is he took these small little pieces, but then he put it back together. He kneaded it together into one big piece. So you had a big piece, and that's why kezayis are more, and that's why you make a maitzi. If that's the case, it has to be eaten, to be yaitza, the mitzvah of matzah, it has to be eaten within a time frame. the time that it takes to eat a pras, achilas pras, between 3 and 9 minutes. Different poskim hold differently. Now, if that's the case, that you took the small pieces, you made it into one big piece, achlon is in the plural, he ate the little pieces. If you're telling me that the case is he combined it into one big piece, it should be in the singular, not she'erson, shachloi, shachlon, shachloimi boy. He ate it because it's now been put into one big piece. More answers are Mayaskin and Bebom Melachem Godol. We're talking where it is in small pieces, in a chanami. We're talking where he did not combine it into one big piece. They are small little pieces, and they're less in size, but the initial, original loaf is still intact. So since the big piece, the original loaf is still intact, even though you have now small little pieces, it's still the shame of the bread, of the lechem, is still upon it. And therefore you'd make a moitzi. What's the maskonos advorim? Amar Rav Sheshes hay chavitza. He said the chavitza aval gav the less be piruam kazayis mevarach lamaitzi lechem meharis. He says even if you don't have pieces of kazayis, you still would make a moitzi. Even if you have small pieces. Amar Rav Avahu deikala turisa denahama. However, he says it has to have the shape of the bread, the appearance. It has to have turisa denahama. It has to have the appearance of bread. It has to look like bread. Truknin chayam bechala. Truknin are chay bechala. Chayasa Ravin Amar Vyachan Truknin patur min achala. And he says they're pots from challah. So it's machlokes if truknin are considered bread or not. What are truknin? For example, my truknin. What are truknin? Amar Abaya kuva da'ara. It's kuva da'ara is you put a cavity in the bottom of the oven. In the ground level of the oven, you made a cavity and you poured the batter into that cavity. Then it's a question, is it considered to be bread or not? So that is truknin. When you had a place in the cavity over there, you put in the flour and the water over there, is that considered bread? That's machlokes. V'omer Abaye Teresa patur min achala. He says Teresa is patur min achala. My Teresa, ikadamra gevil matach. Some say it is gevil matach. So it is similar to like a pancake. Like Rashi says, you take the flour, the water, and you beat it, and then you put it in a frying pan or in an oven on the hot surface of the oven while it's hot. So it's a very loose consistency. It's a soft consistency, and then you put it on the hot surface, and that gives it a form of bread. It's something like a pancake. It doesn't have the entire appearance of bread. It's not like dough, which is a thick consistency and baked. This is a very loose consistency. So this is the case over here where we say that Abaye says Teresa's ptur min achala. It's not considered bread. There's no chi of chala on it. And similarly, you would not make hamoitzi, you would make a mazoinus and not a moitzi. So ikadamra givil mat. That's one opinion. Vikadamra nama de hindika. And some say it's nama de indica. It's the type of bread that they used to bake in India, which is opposed to baking it in an oven. It was on a spit and fried on a spit, and they used to baste it with eggs or with oil and with egg yolk or with oil, and it was basted in that. So it loosely translated could be something like a pretzel, like a thick pretzel. And some say it's a type of bread that they used to put in the kutach mixture. Kutach was a ma'achal that they made out of sour milk, and they made it out, and they put bread pieces in it, and it was this type of bread with this, perhaps we would call it some kind of sour cream mixture. They had pieces of bread that were used into this milk mixture. He said that type of bread is patur min achala. It's not called bread, and therefore you would not make a moitzi. I vatanya chai b'chala. We learned another brayth that you're chai b'chala. Gemara answers, Hasam kirtani taima Rabbi Yehuda imer maseh mechichala. It depends how this bread is made. Asuin ke'avin, if it's braided, so if he made it in the form of a bread, so he's just putting pieces of bread into this milk mixture. But if he braided it like bread, like challah, so then he's giving it the chashivas of challah, it's considered bread. So if it's ke'avin chakilamudim, it's pturim. But if you just made it like boards, if you made it like just regular boards and doesn't have the form and the shape of the bread, then it's pturim. Now, what is the issue with the bread that's made for kutach? Why do we have an issue with it, and why is it dependent on the shape and the effort that was made to make it? So according to Rashi, the issue is because it was baked in the sun. So it was baked in the sun unless there's a specific effort made to make it look like bread, to have the appearance of bread, it's not considered bread. According to Taisus, it's not because it was specifically made in the sun, it's because it was never made with the intention to serve as bread. It was made for other purposes, but not to be eaten as bread is normally eaten. So that's why it depends on the shape that it's made into.